he's 0-2. He might be a player, might be relegated, depends on how the format goes for him, and also his performance. And then StrifeGrow, if he wins here, is in a position where he could also advance with a good record into the next stage of the tournament. So make sure to check that out at heartstats.net/league and get your opportunity to sign up for the qualifiers.
Wow, Fred, I'm amazed you kind of fit that all right in as we begin our first game with StrifeCrow's Hunter against KitKats, who has surprisingly not started with Warrior this time. Instead, he started with Priest.
Okay, and Priest is a decent class against Hunter. It is pretty start dependent, but I feel like just this tempo Priest in general is just start dependent. It's if you miss your drops, it fails harder than the Druid because your rebound is dependent on a board clear, which you don't have very much of. The Akanai Soul Priest is your option, but you need to be doing other stuff. And unfortunately, KitKat has drawn the opposite spectrum of his deck. He has Mind Control as his first draw. It's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, I think Mind Control is not a card that's useful at all in the versus Hunter matchup. It's more in there just to kind of deal with other control matchups, such as the Paladin or the Warrior, or even perhaps the Priest Mirror. It's kind of the 30th card you want to draw in this matchup because you don't even want to see it at all. StrifeCrow could play the Mad Scientist next turn, but he doesn't know if his opponent has a turn 2 play. He decides to go risk it, and hopefully his opponent won't be able to follow up with something like a Haunted Creeper or a Loot Hoarder, and this is just horrible luck from KitKat. StrifeCrow's bet paid off.
And not only is it bad for KitKats for this turn, but next turn he's in the same exact boat. Meanwhile, StrifeCrow does have a way to do stuff. Like that's what's nice about the Hunter is that you always have the hero power to fall back to consistently put out damage. Now, StrifeCrow does have an opportunity to set up a trap or his hero power. And like the trap is actually surprisingly useful against Priest in the early game, but then as it develops with all the buffs of Dark Cultist and Defender of Argus, Power Word Shield, not to mention that fact that you can heal, I feel like Explosive Trap, I don't get much mileage out of it in this matchup.
Ooh, Buzzard.
Wow.
You know, there's not a lot of things. Well, StrifeCrow saw that his opponent was kind of a Temple Priest and not a Control Priest, and Temple Priests typically they don't run Holy Smite. So KitKats actually had no way to deal with this Buzzard on turn on turn 2.
Well, now he does have the Akanai Soul Priest clear, but it must be so tilting just to not do anything and waste 5 mana effectively.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Now we can kind of see the merit of playing the Explosive Trap the previous turn. If StrifeCrow had played the Explosive Trap instead, then this Akanai Soul Priest would have activated the Explosive Trap instead of the Freezing Trap, and kind of just died without wasting the Freezing Trap that might be in play right now in order to go back to KitKats' hand. It's so it basically instead of returning this Akanine Soul Priest, you would have a dead Akanine Soul Priest instead.
Yeah, well, at least he got a card for his efforts, but he did lose the Buzzard. The bad. And you can tell it is Freezing Trap based off of the outline on the Explosive, because the Explosive wouldn't be available for play. You can't lay those 2 traps over. So good catch there, Monk.
What if StrifeCrow plays Snake Trap?
Well, that's true. He did play for Deck Wars, I believe. StrifeCrow was the one who actually sold to me at the very beginning, saying Snake Trap is actually surprisingly amazing value, especially in the mirror matchup. And you even talked about it too last time we casted.
Yeah. Now it's very interesting that StrifeCrow decided to play a second Mad Scientist with a trap already in play. I believe this trap in play is Freezing Trap, but it leads me to believe that StrifeCrow has a different kind of trap in oh wow, no trap came from StrifeCrow's deck.
Well, that is certainly interesting. So we get confirmation that there's no 2 Explosive Traps or another Snake Trap of some kind. It's just Freezing Trap.
Yeah.
And you're kind of okay getting Akanai back in your hand. It's actually one of the best tools to fight against Hunter's low health creatures that often go on the board.
Yeah. If KitKats picks up another Circle of Healing, that Circle of Healing plus Arcanine is still a really good value. It's kind of like a mini
Yeah.
Flame Strike that deals that only costs 6 mana, so still very good.
Unfortunately, there's not as good value on the Alkanite, not the Alkanite, the Cabal Shadow Priest, which Kit Kats thought he could. There was going to be that 1/2 available for stealing, but now the value is a lot less. Unless you see StrifeCrow go for a web spinner, and you'd be happy to take
Yeah.
that.
He's thinking about it really hard. Do I want to potentially give up this web spinner to my opponent if he has a Cabal? But on the other side of the coin is if I don't play the web spinner on this turn, I won't have anything to buff with my Houndmaster in order to get 3 damage in. Well, the correct choice, as we can see, is to actually save the web spinner for next turn, and to buff it with the Houndmaster on turn 6. KitKats immediately goes for the call. He takes the web spinner for himself, and that's great value from the Cabal Shadow Priest.
That's right. Deny the ability for your opponent to draw. StrifeCrow also picks up Undertaker. Another reason why he should have held the web spinner. He could have Undertaker, then played the web spinner, then go for a Houndmaster buff. But of course, we have the luxury of knowing everything. StrifeCrow doesn't, and he now has to deal with the consequences. He still has ability to clear the board, but his turns are starting to get weaker, and then the priest starts to get stronger because he's drawn all of his late game cards. Ysera and Mind Control. Those are the two heaviest cards in the deck, and cards that I believe Brian Kibler was introducing because he felt like his priest deck scaled very poorly in the late game, especially with the proliferation of a lot of control decks like Warrior and Paladin.
Yeah, not only does KitKats have his big cards in the late game, he also has a lot of cards that can scale into the late game, such as Sludge Belcher and the Loot Hoarder. The Loot Hoarder is not that big on its own, but allows him to cycle through his deck to find even more answers and even more creatures to play in the turns between turns 7 and 9.
StrifeCrow is going to trade down, just do whatever he can. Doesn't seem like he has many options at his disposal. And at least the Houndmaster still has 4 attacks, so no spells would be able to affect it directly unless it's something equivalent to Holy Fire.
We're going to see a Sludge Belcher get huge value again. It's going to be fighting against 2 creatures that cannot kill it. Oh, but a kill command. Unfortunately, none of these creatures are beasts. And in fact, they might be 2 of the only minions in StrifeCrow's deck that aren't beasts.
That's quite unfortunate. Now StrifeCrow has to deal with the fact that the Sludge Belcher won't die unless you trade in everything until you trade in a painful amount on your board. And then you fall super far behind. And Priest is up in cards and can start healing. It's not like you can start pressuring because you have Leroy Kill Command that's usually assigned to evaluate your opponent's life and if you can count down damage. But Priest is at 26.
I bet StrifeCrow is really kind of regretting the buzzer play he made on turn 2. Against the Arcanine, he kind of gave up his draw potential by sacrificing the buzzard. The Arcanine Circle of Healing combo just tore apart the board, tore apart the advantage that StrifeCrow originally had. And right now he has a very small hand, and it's not going to become any bigger in the next few turns.
I've heard some criticism from other players in the past that StrifeCrow is a little too concerned with board momentum, like trying to go for tempo. Like we see him drop cards all the time. That doesn't get the value it's supposed to do, right? The Buzzard was one of them, Houndmaster is one of them, and in the past he dropped things like Defender of Argus on a naked board just to have something on board. And in this case, I think you're right, Monk. The fact that he tried to go for a potential blowout play ends up backfiring because he had that Arcanine Soul Priest combo. And now StrifeCrow is paying for it.
Yeah, a lot of times.
But hey, if it worked, he would look like a genius.
Yeah, StrifeCrow does indeed look like geniuses. Looks like a genius sometimes with his plays. Like there's just plays that you don't expect from anyone, and then 2 turns later you're like, oh wow, that play was really smart. And wow, Ysera gets on the field. You know, if you're a Hunter player and your opponent has Ysera on the field and he's at 24 health and you have only 3 cards in hand, you kind of know you're losing at that point.
You know, I didn't think about it, but Laughing Sister is surprisingly effective against Hunter. It's high health, it's untargetable, and it's pretty cheap, so you can combine it with Defender of Argus. So if you don't have Spectrum Knight, this is probably the next best thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a poor man's Spectral Knight or a
Yeah,
rich man's Fairy
Fairy Dragon.
Dragon. Yeah.
Well, very rich, because Fairy Dragon costs 1 mana less, and you gain +3 health. That's
And
pretty
it seems
good.
quite good. Now, Kit Kats has to kind of tread the line between developing the board and playing around Buzzer and Leash, I guess. That's pretty much the only way you can lose at this point. A 4-11 goes into a 1-1.
There you go. Oh, he gets the Emperor Cobra. Be really cool if he got some value off that, but it doesn't look like Strifo can come back from this position. Ysera has sealed the deal. Kit Kat gets his first win of the day, and it's against Strifecrow, arguably his toughest opponent.
Yeah, Strife Crow is on his way out of the tournament almost. If he loses this match, he'll be down at a 1-2 score. Whereas I believe
Someone superimposed Texas over Europe, and that blew my mind. And I saw that. Like, someone showed it to me. My friend showed it to me the other day. I was like, what?
what?
How does that even... Like, how is Texas not its own country? Continent,
Yeah.
even. I don't understand it.
And then we can get talk about Alaska, right?
Oh yeah, Alaska's massive. But we're getting way off topic. This is not a geography course. This is Hearthstone, something much simpler.
All right. A key card in Strife Crow's hand right now is that Fiery War Axe. It can kind of deal with the two biggest threats that Priest can have in the earlier game, which are the Undertaker and the Zombie Chow. It pretty much 2-for-1s those kind of cards, and it's because Strife Crow has that card in his hand right now. Kit Kats is probably unable to get good value from those cards. Fortunately for Kit Kats, he doesn't have those two cards, but unfortunately, again, his start isn't that good. But again, if you flip the coin the other way around, Kit Kats again has that Akanine Circle combo, which can allow him to take back control of the board if he ever loses it.
Okay, so Strifecrow opting to use the 1 damage, save the charge on the weapon for a stronger threat. Inevitably, something like Dark Cultist, and then have the ability to respond to whatever his opponent has, maybe Injured Blade Master. Wow, Kit Kat's whiffing on turn 3. It seems like the first 4 turns, Kit Kat's is just missing 2 drops or more. Because next turn, it's not even that guaranteed either. You don't want to just drop Alkanai and let it die. Oh no,
Yeah.
you missed it on turn 4. This is a
It feels like
disaster.
more hero powering. Well, on the bright side, the warrior isn't putting a lot of pressure on you just simply because it's a control warrior. So you're kind of okay with passing just these few turns and just healing back up. After like 2 or 3 turns of passing, Kit Kats is still at 29 health. So again, not too worried.
Yeah, but then the priest, like this priest thrives off of the board presence. Because then cards like Dark Cultist and Power with Shield become much stronger. Kit Kats is just drawing. He's losing so much tempo. Trying to calculate how much mana he's basically done nothing with. At least 10. All right,
Kit
Strifecrow, by
Kats
the
is-
way.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kit Kats is he's drawing a lot of his big creatures earlier on, which means that if as the game continues, he's going to be kind of drawing more and more dead. This deck, the quote unquote Tempo Priest or the Death Rattle Priest, as it's sometimes called, or even the Brian Kibler Kibler Priest, has a lot of low mana creatures such as that Zombie Chow and the Undertaker. So we're going to definitely be seeing those cards pop up later in Kit Kats' deck to not much value.
Wow. Strifecrow really doesn't care about his Armor Smith. In most cases where your opponent is going for some kind of board aggression or to the face, you often value the health of Armor Smith, but it seems like Strifecrow doesn't prioritize it. Just cares
Well,
about the health of his minions, his bigger minions.
He also is going up against the turn 6 of the priest, so he's going to be really afraid of Cabal
yes.
Shadow Priest.
Good point. Excellent point. So that disincentivizes him from playing the Acolyte without using Cruel Taskmaster. Then now you have Karen, and to get answer, you can answer it with Sylvanas, or you can answer with your own Faceless on a Karen and give the priest one of the most problematic cards possible in Hearthstone.
Yeah. Crow has had some experience with Sylvanas backfiring on him. You
Aw,
can kind of point to Reynad versus Crow from a
too soon,
few
Monk.
games ago. Too soon. Well, to be fair, Crow has had pretty good luck in tournaments recently, in particular against Firebat, where he just got a bunch of insane brawls in a row.
Yeah, that's true. He brawled with a board on Cenarius, and he needed to win him with his Grommash, and it happened exactly the way that he needed. He got the 1 and the 4 roll there to win the game. So I guess Drevko can sometimes take the good with the bad. KitKats, in the meantime, has a lot of bad. He has to deal with a Karen that just got faceless. He doesn't have a big. He only has Akanai Soul Priest and the Circle as a big swing, but I don't know if it fully clears here.
Yeah, there's just too many cards right now that have too many minions on Crow's side of the board that have 5 health. But fortunately, that Defender of Argus is looking mighty tempting. It buffs the Karen up to 5 health, and it potentially buffs the injured Blade Master to 5 health as well, which will allow him to trade efficiently with the Sledge Belcher. Perhaps an even bigger problem is that 3-1 that you're staring at. There's not really a good way to deal with that.
It's true. I mean, there is good way, but it's not very powerful move. Do you know that, by the way, Circle of Healing, you can actually buff it with spell power if you have like Azure Drake on the field or
You mean
Thalnos. If you,
you mean the damage and not the healing, right?
yeah. So you can, if you play Akana Soul Priest and there's a Thalnos on the field and you Circle of Healing, it does 5 damage.
Yeah, it's good to know, especially in this meta where there's going to be a lot of priests around. Surprisingly, it's not something I
That
thought I
caught
would
me off
say.
guard
Yeah,
because they thought stole like my Thalnos when I was playing Miracle Road, and then they did that for 5 damage, and I was pretty surprised.
yeah. You're not going to play around that in the future, though, right?
No, absolutely not. But I just was surprised when my Sludge Belcher and Lotheb died. I was like, what? All right, Strife Crow in the meantime sees a 5-6 and the 5-8, pretty intimidating. Does he have a way to answer it very? Doesn't look like it.
No executes, no shield slams, nothing that can really, nothing in the warrior's arsenal that can really deal with high HP creatures very
Yeah.
efficiently.
Sylvana seems like this is a board she wants to come down on. Is he afraid of anything though? Well,
All right,
there she goes.
just Sylvanas. Oh, it looks like there's going to be some trades made.
Yeah. Kill off this 5-8. You just don't want the priest to like what the intimidating thing about priest is from this position, they attack and use their hero power to gain a lot of mileage on their creatures. So you want to kind of make sure that these creatures don't get full value off of that. With cards like Holy Nova also in the arsenal of priest, with a board like as powerful as what we just saw, yeah, I think it's important to deny a creature like that.
Yeah. This board is also very awkward. Well, to be honest, any board that in which your opponent has Sylvanas is going to be awkward for you. You're really hoping that Sylvanas doesn't get any good trades, but if you don't have any way to silence the Sylvanas and you don't have a good way to kill the Sylvanas without guaranteeing that he gets value out of it, you're kind of hesitant to develop your board at this point.
Power Shield on the Argus is interesting.
I
Maybe
feel like
you're
I feel like KitKats is just looking at his hand right now. He doesn't see anything good, and he wants to draw one more card, but he doesn't want to buff the Bane Bloodhoof right now because if it gets stolen, that's just something that he really doesn't want to deal with in the future.
maybe be willing to give his zombie chows. And if they
Yeah.
don't, well, guess what? They all of a sudden become 5 damage mind blasts. So KitKat's kind of okay with the zombie chows given to his opponent. And also he can take it back too with Cabal Shadow Priest, which is hilarious. In fact, that's actually I think his game plan. Anything that gets stolen, he can just steal it right back.
Yeah, with 2 Cabal Shadow Priest in his hand, that's certainly not a bad plan. Hmm.
Now, of course, Strife Crow is not obligated to trade into Sylvanas. He can slam Fiery War Axe, start using Sylvanas as a way to kill things, and then
Yeah,
evaluate based off what you draw.
I think you want to preserve the Sylvanas for as long as possible, just to have it even more awkward for your opponent to deal with. If you can
Oh
find
yeah.
out some way for your opponent not to be able to kill your Sylvanas on the board without sacrificing all his minions and losing huge value, then you should do that.
With the unstable goal too, there's opportunities to force your opponent to get really awkward with dealing with the Acolyte of Pain. Because if you use Cruel Taskmaster on it, then it's a 3/2, it can't get stolen. And then you have the ability to draw. Strifecrow not looking to play around here. He has Grommash and Cruel Taskmaster. That's 12 damage. And with this push with 9, and his opponent doesn't heal up, Kit Kats is dead next turn.
Hmm.
Or can be dead, rather.
Yeah, Strife is also not afraid of this unstable ghoul being stolen by a Cabal Shadow Priest. If he gets stolen, it just puts one more minion, one strong minion that has a 4/5 body, which the Sylvanas could potentially steal. So that's a probably a net benefit for Strife Crow.
Yeah, in fact, the 1/3, you're kind of hoping he plays Cabal Shadow Priest because that means the rest of his plays are not going to be very good to stop you for killing next turn because it uses 6 of his 9 mana.
Kikats probably wasn't worried about this before, but yeah, he's definitely in danger of dying. That 9 damage that Strife Crow pushed onto Kikats in the last turn from going to face, just, he's definitely feeling very threatened by it.
Hmm. The problem is after Cabal Shadow Priest, you still have to deal with this. Shadow Word Death on Sylvanas to give up one of his minions immediately. It's the Defender of Argus.
Yep.
And then is he just going to take it back? You have to stop your opponent in case he has Grommash.
Do you steal the taunt? The attacks to the face kind of signal for Kit that perhaps Strife Crow has some burst damage. So even though the 2/5 is going to be a stronger minion, I think Kit is really prioritizing the taunt. And Kit
Well, it won't
goes for
matter here,
face as
Monk.
well.
I believe if you attack with the weapon and then Grommash
Yeah,
gets activated, the Whirlwind effect actually gets it. So then Strifecrow has 16 damage. Or
yeah.
15 if he wants to make it exactly.
Does Strife Crow realize? Yeah,
I
I
think
believe
so.
he's playing the Grom right now.
Yeah, so in a very weird way, because he took it, Kit Kats actually loses. And now the series is even, and Strifecrow may be able to come back here.
Yeah, and might not be able to stave himself off from the shame of going 0-3 in this rather formidable group, I'd say.
Right? You got to show him how Warriors played.
Yeah, you got to show him who's boss, and it's
That's right.
indeed.
I like it. Kit Kat's saying, I'm going to show you how it's done, son.
Yeah, I think at this point he's already down two matches, and it's going to be rough for him to qualify anyway. So he has a lot of pride on the line right now, and he's lost with his warrior twice already in this tournament, and I think it's time for him to show who's boss.
All right, well, nothing's like who's boss in the Warrior matchup than getting good Acolyte value. And both of these players have opportunities to do just that. Now, in the Warrior matchup, I used to think that Acolyte value was the end all be all to the early game, but there's actually more to it, Monk. Can you explain a little bit about the early game dynamics of Warriors with Warrior? Because you've played this matchup a few times and even has one of the most memorable games against Tides of Times in Deck Wars.
Oh yeah, I certainly remember that game where my rags kind of missed a 66% chance to win the game. Sylvanas stole the rag, and then just a lot more coin flips with
Yeah.
rags from that
While
point on.
fatigue was going on, too.
Oh yeah.
Good
Oh
times.
yeah. So the warrior. Well, this is going to be a rather boring game, but Strife Crow sets up the axe, which means his opponent really isn't too tempted to play the Acolyte of Pain. On the other hand, unfortunately, Kit Kats doesn't have either a War Axe or an Armor Smith into an Acolyte of Pain. He has to use his 4/2 weapon, which I guess is okay. It sets up the Acolyte of Pain in order for a Whirlwind to happen next turn. And again, you're getting Acolyte value from that.
which is important. You know, you want to line up your removals accordingly. Shield Slams executes while being able to get mileage out of Death Bite too. Death Bite is one of those removal spells against these mid-range creatures you start seeing very commonly, Loatheb, as well as Sludge Belchers that often bait the removal because you don't have anything on the board. So Kit Kats does have good stuff, but I feel like it's pretty mirrored here in the early game. Neither player really able to get crazy value off their early game minions and a lot of passivity early on.
Now, at this point, does StrifeCro go for just the simple armor, or does he go for the shield block in order to cycle through his deck? If he goes for the shield block at this point, he may not be able to combo it with a shield slam in the future. But you got to be thinking, oh, I'm probably gonna stay at high armor for a vast duration of the game. Ooh, an unstable Ghoul in the field, which means Kit Kats will be able to gain immense value
Wow.
from this Acolyte of Pain, drawing
That
two
is
cards
at
off of it.
least 3 draws.
Yeah.
Oof.
One draw from Deathspite, one draw from Unstable Ghoul. And a second Acolyte of Pain. Wow.
Just like that, Kit Kat jumps out to a pretty significant card count lead. And, well, Strefko picks up more weapons. That wasn't what he was looking for. He already has 4 charges to work with. And that's assuming he's even want to attack every single turn. So this Fiery War Axe was a dead draw, at least for now.
Yeah. Strifecrow equipped it to this Fire War Axe a lot earlier than I would think most players would. A lot of players would rather, in this control versus control matchup, build up their armor as early as possible. Now that Strifecrow has kind of committed to this Fiery War Axe, he can't really play a Death Spite without just overwriting the War Axe and kind of just losing a card for free. So it's kind of a conundrum for Strifecrow at this point.
It's as if your opponent oozed your axe. And also, you rarely see warriors equip weapons and then just not attack for a while in fear of potential Harrison Jones. But of course, it's early, so he was just trying to scare his opponent into not playing early creatures while being able to play out his own. Unfortunately, it's not worked out for his favor. He still uses this as an opportunity to cut through.
Yeah,
But he
I
does
also
have this
believe,
4th weapon. He's got Death Bite, double Death Bite, and Fiery War Axe. That's pretty unfortunate for Strifecrow.
yeah, I also believe that if both players kind of scouted each other and they knew each other's like typical warrior decks, they would know that I believe neither runs Harrison Jones at the moment.
Ah. Well, I don't think they've read each other's deck lists. I know in Prismatic Cup on Sunday they will, though. That's kind of a cool thing. Do you
Yeah, I'm
like
sorry.
that personally as a player? Like the ability to know your opponent's decks in and out, so you're playing with full information.
I guess it's kind of a toss-up. If you're the kind of player, well, there are certain types of players who like to bring surprises to the table. A
Right.
player, for example, is Firebat. He's often told me that he perhaps may not be the most mechanically skilled player, but he always brings decks to the tournaments where he has an edge up. And if you're Firebat, you don't want your opponent to know your deck list. Whereas you're a person like, for example, Hyped, he kind of plays the same deck over and over again. He learns that deck to perfection, and he knows all the ins and outs. And if you're a player like Hyped, you kind of don't mind as much that your deck list is kind of public. You just know that you're the best at that deck, and if you know your opponent's deck, you're gonna be less surprised in the future, and you're gonna have an advantage at that point.
Yeah, that's good points for sure. I'll keep that in mind as the tournament comes up on Sunday. Strifecrow, in the meantime, kind of ailing over how to face off against the Sylvanas, but I guess he's okay giving up this 1-2 considering he needs to get rid of this Fiery War Axe charge anyways. Develop a Death Spite. He has Acolyte of Pain. Kind of scary that the possibility of Harrison Jones is also out there, but like you said, perhaps he's paying attention and making sure that he doesn't lose it whatsoever.
What do you think about throwing that Acolyte of Pain out into the field so early? It kind of plays into a Spellbreaker, and also it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you draw a lot of cards. For example, if Kit Kats didn't have the Spellbreaker, he could have just Fiery War Axed it down and prevented the full, I guess, 2 draws that could possibly come from the Acolyte of Pain, if he had saved it a bit later, and he got to proc the Whirlwind from Death's Bite.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point for sure. I don't know what Shrevko was really aiming for, but perhaps he was hoping that next turn he'd have the ability to drop something significant, like a 6-drop, what he just drew, and he wouldn't be able to drop Acolyte plus that. So he was trying to squeeze in his mana efficiently now, so then next turn he has whatever he drew to be able to fit the curve. Unfortunately, it hasn't actually panned out that way for him, and his Armor Smith is gaining additional value based off of the Deathbite attack. So it feels like KitKats is pulling further ahead here, Monk.
Yeah, further and further ahead. Although I will say that Strifecrow has the Cairn in play, and this is one of the ways that he could possibly come back. I bet KitKats is kind of regretting the fact that he kind of Spellbreakered the Acolyte, and now there comes a better target for the Spellbreaker, which is the Cairn. I think KitKat's reasoning last turn was that he was so ahead on card advantage right now that, and it was unlikely for his opponent to have a Cairn in the near future anyways, that he could kind of afford to get not as much value as he could have with the Spellbreaker.
Yeah, not to mention that there are other threats such as Sylvanas and other creatures that have Death Rattle that you might want to impact. Now, KitKats hovers over Ragnaros, and he drops this. Ragnaros better hit something good. It hits the face. Now, he does have Grommash in hand, so perhaps he can turn aggression. At least it didn't hit Cairn and then replaced itself with 4/5, then giving your opponent the ability to do cool stuff. Although maybe he would have been happy with that too, because it would have been easy to remove.
Yeah, I have to say this wasn't a super typical game of Warrior against Warrior. I think more typically in this matchup, it's a lot about armoring up from both sides and playing, I guess, a little less aggressively. This game kind of turned out a bit weird in that I think Strifecrow had a handful of weapons, but not too many other creatures, while KitKats just got all the draws right from the bat with his Acolyte of Pain, and he was able to put threat after threat. Now the board is a little congested, and neither player really has had time to armor up.
Yeah, no one has armor. Now, one thing that's interesting because of that is KitKats could technically, or Strifecrow rather, could put KitKats at 15 with Alexstrasza at any given whim, but he doesn't necessarily have a way to deal with the fact that his opponent has Ragnaros. Alexstrasza comes out, and it seems like he's going for the aggressive approach. He does have a lot of damage and weapon burn, too. So maybe if this Ragnaros isn't panning out and hits something like the Acolyte, it can pan out for Strifecrow to maybe win the game here.
Yeah, it's... KitKats, even though he has so many cards, there's actually not a very efficient way to deal with this Alexstrasza. He only can deal 7 damage to it right now. Ooh, but a second Shield Slam. That could be fairly impactful. He Shield Slams the Alex for 7, and I guess he can play the Unstable Ghoul. And I'm not sure if there's any way for Strifecrow to get around this Unstable Ghoul with the Warrior. Maybe if he runs a Spellbreaker himself, but again, you got to think that's highly unlikely.
Yeah, highly unlikely indeed. KitKats has one more opportunity to Shield Slam if he wants to take out, say, the first body of Cairn, or reduce his chances of hitting something completely useless.
I think you clear the Cairn out. Just less minions on the board. I don't think the Alexstrasza is a good option because you're essentially playing around one potential card from your opposing Warrior, which is the...
good
nice
snipe there for KitKats.
Yeah, which is the Spellbreaker, and you don't even know if Strifecrow runs Spellbreaker. Execute, a very good draw from Strifecrow.
That is really important too. So that way now he has an opportunity to deal with this. Suppose you shield block first though, see what you draw. Maybe you pick up Faceless Manipulator and you turn on the aggression right back.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent play. Shield block, your hand isn't very good anyway. Brawl. I don't think it's going to be useful this turn, but I do believe that StrifeCro will have to use it in one of the following two turns. You see the Ysera and the Alexstrasza from KitKat's hand, and after StrifeCro uses this execute on this Ragnaros, he won't have any other viable ways to deal with these big bombs that KitKats will be sure to bring in the next two turns.
All right, StrifeCro has the opportunity to gain a couple armor here with Armor Smith. And then after this, develop a weapon of his choice. Maybe start hammering away as well. I like using Death's Bite over... Oh, I guess he's going Fiery War Axe. But I like using Death's Bite over the Fiery War Axe here because of the opportunity to draw into Grom. Wow, no weapon equip whatsoever. Now that is interesting.
Yeah, interesting indeed.
What's going on? He had the opportunity to attack, but he chose not to. Care to enlighten me, Monk?
Yeah, I guess he's I actually probably I think Death's Bite would have been a good choice in that circumstance. It would have given him an opportunity to win, whereas I don't think in this control versus control war right now that he has that much of a chance. He draws Sylvanas though, which is one of the best top decks he could have gotten.
Unfortunately, though, KitKats has Dream. At least I believe that's Dream. From the card art,
Yeah.
you can't see it if it's Dream, but it's 0 mana, and the card art looks like it's Dream. And Dream returns a minion for free, gaining you whatever tempo. The difference is between the mana cost of the creature and that. So it's at this point, KitKats can leverage it to push for damage and be able to develop something else. Like perhaps his own Alexstrasza. And then go for a push with Grommash and end the game.
Yeah, and of course, if you do that series of plays, you have to clear the Armor Smith. Because if you don't, then Brawl plus an Armor Smith is a very deadly combo.
Oh, KitKats knows. All right, well now StrifeCro develops the Fiery War Axe, but he's one turn behind attacking.
Well, he has about 10 seconds to decide whether he's going to attack or not. And I guess the answer is no.
Man, I am really interested by this series of play because he has 14 damage worth of burn.
Yeah. I guess StrifeCro, because he didn't attack, I think maybe he's confident that he can win in the long game, which I don't know. That's he has Sylvanas on the board, which is one of the best control cards, but it's still he doesn't see what we see right now. He doesn't see the Alexstrasza in KitKat's hand, which is another huge bomb, and he doesn't see the Dream, which can effectively neuter the Sylvanas for at least 1 to 2 more turns.
Well, KitKats recognizes his opportunity to perhaps develop a Grommash win condition here. And of course, Dream to send back the Sylvanas, I feel like is almost guaranteed here. How useful it is to protect your Ysera.
Well, it does look like he's going for the setup with Death's Bite.
So if you Death's Bite, Loatheb, and Dream shut down your opponent's ability to play spells, protect your Ysera. And you also kill off the Armor Smith, which would be your rival in some of these brawl scenarios. Oh, interesting. He doesn't protect the health amount. He wants to go for that extra keep himself above health in case of Grommash.
Yeah, he values the 1 health on himself a little bit more than
Oh, interesting.
having Ysera in execute range.
Because if Grommash has 10 damage, say it came down with whatever spell you could play with Loatheb costing 5 more, but say it came down and there's 10 extra damage, then he'd be just above it. But Cruel Taskmaster is 12, though.
Grom plus Cruel Taskmaster is 12, plus the War Axe is 15. So I guess, yeah, it was smart for KitKats. Well, yeah, that would have killed KitKats anyway, so I'm not sure if the one health really mattered too much.
It could be that next turn, if he armors up, then he'll be at 16, because assuming this Acolyte just attacks into the face, then he has the ability to armor up slightly out of range after he kills off this Acolyte. So it could be a play to survive the next turn. Like if he doesn't kill him the next turn, then he has an ability to put himself out of range the following turn.
Wow, that's really forward thinking, I have to say there.
I'm sure that's something KitKats has to put in his mind, as these last few turns have become really, really hard to kind of make some of these decisions. Another Dream, another Sylvanas, and StrifeCro just losing mana effectively at this turn, and he's still not attacking with his weapon.
Yeah,
Just refuses to.
Two Dreams in a row. I'd say that Dream is might be one of the best cards that KitKats could have gotten right now, especially with his line of play of putting a lot of tempo, a lot of pressure on the board, and threatening the Grom kill. I don't believe StrifeCro has another turn where he can just play the Sylvanas, armor up, and pass. He has to do something to affect the board next turn, or he'll just die from Grom.
Yeah, most likely some kind of brawl play. See, KitKats has Grommash, that's 14, plus the 9, that's 28? Wait, how did I count that? 23, sorry. I pushed in another 5 by accident. Math is hard. And KitKats just goes off for something else. Embarrassing math mistake on camera, as always.
Wow, KitKats is gonna go for more draws. Nope, he just develops the Acolyte of Pain.
If he had Nightmare instead of Dream, he had 28, but still would be a couple damage off lethal.
I think we're gonna have to see a brawl this turn. It's so much value.
How do you feel about tossing out Sludge Belcher? Do you to increase the chance, or do you feel you brawl and react?
Well, no matter what, StrifeCro is gonna brawl right now.
Oh man, the 1/3 survives.
I think you're okay with that. Your opponent already has a.
Absolutely ecstatic about that situation.
And you know what? If StrifeCro plays a Sludge Belcher on this turn, right now to fill up his mana, then the Grom plan won't work. And amazingly, I believe StrifeCro has somehow kind of gotten back into this game, even though Ysera was on the board for 3 turns.
That is quite impressive. Still not over yet. KitKats has many threats, and his opponent now has the possibility of still killing him. He has the weapon, plus the Sludge Belcher, plus the opportunity to Grommash. Grommash, let's say it hits for 10, plus the 3, 6. That's 16 damage. KitKats is going to use his Death Bite charge, though. Might as well start developing other stuff.
Yeah, as this game goes further and further into late game, we have to keep in mind how many cards each player has drawn off their Acolytes. I believe KitKats has drawn 4 thus far, and probably might even draw 5 or 6, whereas StrifeCro has yet to draw 1. So KitKats, his deck will be a lot thinner, and we see he actually only has 7 cards left. This means that if it goes into Fatigue, KitKats will be in a huge disadvantage. StrifeCro will have about 4 or 5 cards before he goes into Fatigue after KitKats. So KitKats is almost even kind of on a clock at this moment.
Well, I think you'd be comfortable with a clock like this. Although now StrifeCro has Ragnaros.
If you clear this Acolyte and Ragnaros hits, there's no real good way for KitKats to deal with the Ragnaros at this point. So it could swing the game around. I think this will be the key play of this whole entire game.
Well, never mind. You have Cruel Taskmaster with Execute. So KitKats has a backup plan, but the big picture things, if this Grommash misses, then if this Ragnaros misses, oh no! Then it's game over. KitKats has won because he has Grommash and the Cruel Taskmaster and the Nightmare. So it has not paid off, and Rag RNG has betrayed StrifeCro.
Yeah, I was going to say he has KitKats has exact lethal, but no. KitKats is going for the BM, the 13-13 Alexstrasza.
Wow, GG's, and StrifeCro will end up losing the series. Kit Kats redeems himself slightly.